Good evening, I'm Hannah Moore and welcome to tonight's episode of A Current Affair. Qantas is Australia's largest airline by fleet size, international flights and international destinations. However, in 2011, a dispute arose out of negotiations during mid-2010 between Qantas and their three unions of its workers. The Australian International Pilots Association, the Transport Workers Union and the Australian Licensed Aircraft Engineers Association called for greater job security, better wages and conditions throughout their many months of industrial action. The employers argued that the unit price of other airlines differed significantly and threatened strikes. Qantas then announced undefined job cuts as a result of the economic conditions in Australia. It was important to Qantas to maintain a competitive advantage and to provide a sustainable rate of return to the company. During this time, there were already pressures on Qantas that workers didn't consider, including the GFC, rising oil prices and the high Australian dollar. Therefore, Qantas didn't have the ability to increase wages as the current economy had already greatly affected the cost of their flights and therefore their income. By the end of July, industrial action had begun and numerous strikes took place through to October. This resulted in a controversial and dramatic step on behalf of Qantas as they grounded 118 aircrafts around 22 airports in the world on the 29th of October 2011. Transport Minister Anthony Albanese has expressed frustration, saying the government is extremely concerned about the future of Qantas, its workforce, and also the travelling public. TWU, AIPA and ALEA brought industrial action in 2011 as the only lawful mechanism under the Fair Work Act 2009, Chapter 3, to improve wage allowances. This action included time stoppages every day for 1 hour, engineers completing work with their non-dominant hand, and site walk-offs. However, not all action was lawful. The long-haul pilots began unauthorised in-flight announcements and informing passengers of their union campaign. Together, this resulted in Qantas locking out their employees and grounding all flights. Under the Fair Work Act 2009 and the Industrial Relations Act 1999, employees do have the right to take protected action during bargaining. On referral by the government citing dispute as being of national economic significance, the FWA did terminate action under the Fair Work Act 2009, Section 423. It was deemed that it was causing significant economic harm to the employer and employees. By obtaining the termination, Qantas was able to bring an end to the negotiations and begin arbitration of the agreements. However, Greens MP Adam Bandt said the decision has set a dangerous precedent by rewarding a company for taking drastic industrial action to gain an advantage over its employees by ensuring industrial negotiations were terminated. Qantas's lockout was indeed disproportionate to the union members' action and forced government intervention as the lockout had already greatly affected the inability of the employees to earn money, further affecting their wages. Parties acted lawfully, but has argued that Qantas's tactics through threatening employees' wages call for renewed legislative changes. Under Division 6 of the Industrial Relations Protocol, Section 174(3)(b), it states that a lockout by an employer is lawful only if the employer has generally tried to reach agreement before the lockout starts. The term generally tried is questionable and is recommended to be changed to after all industrial relation processes have been exhausted under the Fair Work Act 2009. This recommendation would have ensured that Qantas negotiated an agreement before a detrimental lockout occurred. The change in law changes the order of which bargaining occurs, and that lockouts only occur if FWA processes fail, in the hope to prevent lockouts totally. In future cases, we hope to prevent lockouts that severely affect employees' wages through a sooner resolution on behalf of the FWA. Further recommendations include a complete department within Qantas to bypass unions stepping in and taking extreme action. This will increase successful bargaining and communication between the employees and employers to avoid a third-party disruption and detrimental effects industrial action can have to the employers, employees and the Australian economy. The industrial actions of the unions had not only affected the company but the country more broadly. For instance, Qantas reported the following costs on industrial action to the company. Along with affecting 70,000 domestic international passengers and the cancellations of 447 flights, Qantas's lockout caused significant damage to Australia's tourism industry, the aviation industry and the economy more generally. With the location and size of Australia, Australia is dependable on aviation, and that the majority of international visitors arrive by air and remote tourism destinations need aviation to deliver their customers. Daniel Gershwin from the Queensland Tourism Industry Council also said that the grounding was a nightmare for the industry, causing enormous collateral damage to everybody. Roger Powell from the Tourism Accommodation Australia also said that the hotel industry had greatly been impacted by the cancellations, and the long-term impact would be huge. It has been concluded that the industrial dispute caused major damage to Australia's economy and tourism industry. Prior to the ruling, FWA considered it doubtful that the work bans and stoppages would cause significant damage to the tourism and air transport industries. Therefore, the misjudgment of the FWA as they elected not to use its power under the Fair Work Act in 2009 earlier on, meant that the lockout and grounding caused serious economic harm. With sooner intervention, the FWA would have lessened and even prevented the damage the dispute had to the economy. On this evidence, there is significant need to evaluate FWA and that they should be doing anything to avoid significant damage to the tourism industry. Also, in the Industrial Relations Act 1999, its principal objective is to provide economic prosperity and social justice by providing for an effective and efficient economy with strong economic growth. With failure to do so, both acts prove inefficient in promoting and supporting the economy of Australia. During the 1989 Australian Pilots Dispute, the Hawke government took considerable measures to protect Australia's economy by authorising the RAAF and international airlines to carry domestic airline passengers. If the government had taken considerable measures like that in 1989, a substantial decrease in loss to Australia's economy would have occurred. Due to the incapabilities of the government, the Fair Work Act 2009 and the Industrial Relations Act 1999, further recommendations must be made to protect the future of Australia's economy from similar industrial disputes. Under the recommendation of Adam Bant, MP Australian Greens, it suggested that a bill that would impose limits on employers planning Qantas-style lockouts should be introduced as part of the Fair Work Act 2009. Further providing this bill lists the strategies for both the employers and employees that are necessary to prevent such action and to protect the economy during actions. Such companies should assess regularly the likelihood of employees/unions organising and taking protected industrial action, along with assessing whether such action opposes threat under the Fair Work Act 2009. If an industrial action is necessary, contingency plans on behalf of Qantas to keep production and services going should be formulated, as the prevention of a disruptive effect on the economy and company is necessary, as well as notifying the community as much notice as possible of any anticipated interruption to normal operations is important in keeping a good communication with customers to prevent disruption and further customer loss. Another yet largely significant recommendation is that a retrospective to the previous Work Choices Act 2005, which a person must not engage in or threaten to organise any industrial action with the intent to coerce another person to agree to approve a collective agreement. In doing so, a cooperative workplace can be introduced back into companies in relation to economic prosperity and welfare of people of Australian employees. Through legalising industrial action, harmony and sustainability is restored to workplaces. It is clear that the industrial dispute called for review of both the Fair Work Act 2009 and the Industrial Relations Act 1999. Qantas' dispute raised the attention once again to the flaws between industrial action and its effects on the employers, employees, the economy and the tourism industry. Qantas released a statement that Qantas welcomes the decision of Fair Work Commission. This brings to a close the industrial disputes with 3 unions which affected Qantas operations in 2011. However, it is clear that the dispute had a detrimental effect on Qantas and its economy. Recommendations referring to earlier intervention on behalf of the FWA to prevent lockouts will decrease the effect that the disputes has on employees. Qantas should also introduce a complaints department to strengthen communication between employers and employees, as well as implementing a list of strategies for both employers and employees to lessen the likelihood of action and its effects on the economy. Furthermore, legalising industrial action will restore harmony and sustainability in the workplace. I am Hannah Moore, and good night.